The scroll gives you an opportunity to look beyond the lips of the prophet into the heart and the fears and the feet of the prophet. And I think it's very, very important that we do that, because when we understand who a person is, then we can balance what they say against where they came from, how they feel, and who they really are. Sometimes our greatest messages are never in our lips. It's in our struggle, it's in our pain, it's in our problems. Our human fallacies is what connects us to people. And I think the opportunity to let people know that you're just a guy like anybody else, a person with issues and kids and crises and stresses just like them. It is our similarity to them that makes us relative to them. I don't want to be their hero. I want to be one from among them, because that's who I am.
It was in Kentucky. And so I'm broke, I ain't got a dime. I get to Kentucky and I'm preaching for their pastors conference. I'm 27 years old, preaching for the Kentucky Pastors Conference. It was a trip. And so I get there and they got this stretch limo waiting on me. And I used to travel with a whole lot of baggage. And so I get there, and so they have this chauffeur, and it's a brother, and he wants to, take my stuff. I said, no, I got my stuff, I'll carry it. It was heavy, it was very heavy, because I had to preach like 4 times, and I was there a week, and not only that, but they had a speaker in the day or at night. Whenever I wasn't speaking, someone else was speaking, so I brought all these clothes, because at that time I traveled heavy, now I travel light. So I get to the car, carrying my baggage myself. And brother keeps saying, man, you ain't got to carry it. I said, listen, I'm carrying this. I was carrying my baggage because I didn't have no money. And I couldn't tip them. And I was embarrassed. So I put my stuff in the trunk, get in the back seat, open my door myself, and get in that seat. And we get to the Galt House Hotel, downtown Louisville. When I got there, several things going in my head. Number one, I'm in the town of my favorite athlete, Muhammad Ali. And during the ride, because it's my first time there, I'm thinking about all the hell Ali went through. And I'm thinking about how Ali, by this point, has become a statesman, and, but I'm saying, that's Ali. I ain't gonna be no statesman. I'm gonna pay this woman back for the hell she took me through, and I'm gonna pay them folk back who did me wrong. We get to the hotel. I jump out the car, because I ain't having him open my door. Run around to the trunk. He said, man, I got you. I said, I got my bags, man. Here comes the bellman. Brother, he says, welcome to the guardhouse, Dr. Haynes. I said, I ain't no doctor. I'm just Freddie Haynes. He said, no, welcome. We're glad to have you. And you're the guest of the Kentucky Baptist pastors, and we're real honored, and blah, blah, blah. May I take your bags? No, I got my bags. And he said, I got my bags, bro. I'm fine. Because I ain't got no money. I can't tip. But I didn't tell him that, because, pride. Get my bags. Stumbled up, literally fell up the steps. And I said, I got it, I'm fine. Go through the door, go up to the front desk, and a sister's at the front desk. And she says, welcome to the guardhouse, Dr. Haynes. I said, ma'am, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm Freddie Haynes, here for the Kentucky Baptist pastors. She said, you ain't got to have an attitude about it. And I said, yes, sir, I said, you're right, I'm sorry. She said, here's your key. And she hit the bell. Bellman? I said, man, what do you do that for? She said, because he's coming to get your bag. I said, no, he's not. I said, I got my bags. She said, I just saw you fall up them steps. We ain't having you sue us. He'll get your bags. I said, ma'am, okay, let me just be real with you. I ain't got no money. I'm broke, and I can't tip him. She said, you ain't got to tip him. You're the guest of the Kentucky Baptist pastor. I said, you don't understand. If he takes my bags, I've been taught. I'm an educated brother. You tip people, and I believe in tipping us extra. She said, okay, evidently you have a hearing issue, Dr. Haynes. You're the guest of the Kentucky Baptist. They have all of your charges covered. I said, I ain't got no tips. She said, okay, since you can't hear, I'm gonna help you read. She turned the screen of the computer. It said, direct bill, all charges for Dr. Haynes to Kentucky Baptist pastors. Bottom line, all gratuities included. Here's the deal, big lesson. I'm carrying baggage that's already been paid for. And that, for me, I'm thinking about all the baggage of bitterness I'm carrying towards a whole lot of folk right now. I mean, a whole lot of people, because I stood there and I just started crying unashamedly, because my baggage wasn't even limited to what I had just gone through. I was carrying baggage from knives in my back, I mean, you name it. There were people who were in my bags, and the resentment I was carrying. And I get this message, you carrying stuff that's been paid for.
I remember one time I got on the bus with my mother. I used to ride in my father's truck. He sold wood and coal, my grandfather's truck. And I would sit up front in the cab, and he would let me count the money, because in the 3rd grade, I could count better than the other men who worked in the truck. They didn't have that much education. And so I would sit up front. I got a kind of front seat complex, looking out front, see what's happening, looking in the rearview mirror. And I went down there with my mother, and I sat on the front of the bus right behind the driver looking, and she kept going. She didn't see me sit down so quickly. And there were 3 white kids in front of me. I shall never forget. And the bus driver said, I'm not moving until I have some order on this bus. He said, order loud enough for the adults, the black, the head on the back. He couldn't have been talking to me, I thought, because I was sitting alone and quiet, and 3 white kids were there. There must be an order on the bus. And the adults looked, and they saw what was happening. And so my mother came forward to get me, and I resisted, and she pinched me. And the driver said, read on that sign up there. And the sign said, colored seat from the rear, whites from the front. Those who violate will be punished by law, caution. And I went back, I was crying because I was humiliated. She pinched me, and it hurt me. And I was angry with her. And so one of my father's friends, Mr. Yates, said to me, she did that because she loves you. That was confusing to me. Love me, she pinched me, she embarrassed me, she humiliated me. He said, well, first of all, the back, the bus will get where the front is going. And the bus have a wreck, folk in the back won't get hurt. And if folks don't want to sit next to you, don't sit next to them. He was teaching me the rules of installation. I mean, so that sitting in the front shouldn't matter. If a bus you won't get, there's a wreck, you won't get hurt. They want to sit next to you, don't sit next to them. You know, black the berry, sweet the juice. He was teaching the rules of how to protect yourself in the occupied zone. I never was comfortable with those rules. At some point, when I broke out those rules, was the defining moment to break out the rules of occupation. Because on occupation, you can either adjust to occupation and play by the rules, and you can even make a good living inside the boundaries, or you can resent, know better, and in your heart know better and be angry, or you can fight back and resist. And I learned early on, really basically through Dr. King's inspiring role of scholarship and leadership, to fight back, neither resent nor adjust.
the time I yearned for my father the most was when I was raped. I wanted my father to come and beat the man up, to pick me up and say it's gonna be all right and I'm gonna make it all better. I was expecting my father to go and let the man know that this was the worst thing he's ever done and he will never see another day. And so because I didn't have a father, I didn't tell anybody. And I remember I'm the baby in the family. I have 5 older brothers than me, and I didn't tell any of them because while they looked like fathers, I knew they were not my father, and so I just kept it. But that's the best time, and the worst time I can say I looked for my father is when I lost something in terms of the rape, and the second time I yearned for him is when I achieved something. You know, graduated from high school, or go to your prom, or you graduated from college, or, you know, anytime you achieve something, you were looking for your father in the stand. One day I was told that there's a man in my village, not too far, that they think he was my father. And I'll share this story that I said I was going to leave school early and I was going to go find him and ask him if you're my father. And so I skipped out of school. I had a good friend named Yasmin. I'm Jasmine. She's Yasmin. And I said, they told me there's this man down the street, Mr. Rudolph, that he's my father. And so I'm going to go ask him. And so I went, I left class early. Yasmin went with me and got to the house and everything. And I rang the doorbell, and this woman came to the door that I found out later was his wife. And I said, ma'am, is Mr. Rudolph here? Is Mr. Rudolph here? And she said, Rudolph, there's a little girl here, and she wants to talk to you. So he came, and I said, hi, Mr. Rudolph. He said, hi. I said, my name is Jasmine. At that time, I was Jasmine Wilshire. He said, okay. I said, do you know my mother? My mother is Nell Wilshire. He said, yeah, I know your mother. I said, they told me that you and my mother had a relationship, and you can be my father. You may be my father. And he looked at me straight in the eyes, and he said, I don't know where you get that from. I'm not your father. And that moment just tore me up. It wounded me more than I can imagine. And I left. And I walked, and I kept on walking. And I got to these houses in the neighborhood, and these 3 people, 2 women and a man, came out. And they said, hey, come here. And I went into their house. And they said, you just left Mr. Rudolph, right? I said, yeah, how you know? They said, that's our brother. He called and he told us you were coming this way. I said he did. And they said, yeah, he couldn't say anything in front of his wife, but he is your father. And the rejection, the pain that he wouldn't claim me, because he was trying to keep peace because he had an affair with my mother. And that's how I knew that that man was my father, not because he owned me. He didn't have the courage to come out and say I was, but he called these siblings and they told me. And through that, I grew a relationship with them. In fact, he would buy me gifts and drop it out at their house, and I would get the gifts. But he didn't have to buy a gift. I just wanted him to say that I was his daughter.
My mama was 15 when she had me, and being that young, just too young to have a child. And because of that, coupled with some drinking issues and things of that nature, we bounced around a lot, my sisters and I. So to this day, and I'm over 40 now, I never remember my mother hugging me in my life until I got grown. She says she did, but I don't remember. A child ought to remember that. My dad, who was a child of the 60s, of course, was trying to make me the next Malcolm X, so he didn't hug me because he wanted me to be tough for my sisters, and so, you know, consequently, no one hugged me. So that was a kind of rejection to me. That was rejection. Psychologists suggest that if you don't feel loved by your mother, then you feel no one loves you. So for me, her not hugging me has definitely impacted me. And then my father, who I think did a good job, as good as he could to be a young brother in the 70s, man. He could have left us, and he never did, and I love him for that. But then again, the memories are crazy because it seems like once I got grown, he kind of rejected me. So my mom, I felt she rejected me. She didn't. She was doing the best she could as a 15-year-old, 16. By the time she was 19, my two sisters were here. So here she is, 19, with 3 kids, 4 kids. My little sister died a crib death. So, you know, that was a lot. But then, when I turned, you know, 18, 19 and fell in love with God, and the Word Church started exploding, it's hard to explain, but it's like my father, he kind of rejected me. You know, at this level, you're gonna deal with haters, man. You're gonna deal with people who don't think you're sincere. It comes with it, man. You don't wanna take some hits, don't be successful, but I'm not sure any man is supposed to be rejected by his father. And so, you know, a couple summers ago, I guess I would call it my low. I was on the phone with my dad, and Word Church is exploding. I'm trying to help all the poor people I can in Cleveland, man, and just be a decent brother, man, loving one woman, taking care of my children. And he said to me on the phone, he said, Ray, sometimes I don't think you're sincere about what you do. And for me, you know, to hear my father say that I wasn't sincere, you could have shot me, man. It took so much out of me. I remember standing there crying like a baby because, you know, no man should hear from his father. I needed that affirmation. I needed to know that I was all right. I don't care how many thousands of people tell you that you're all right. So for me, rejected as a child by mom, and then rejected by dad as an adult, I guess that's what makes me love the Word Church so much, man. It's what makes me love the Word Church because they've always told me I was okay. When I make mistakes, I'm okay here. They love me unconditionally. They get in line to hug me. So I'm one of those pastors that can honestly say, I need my church as much as they need me, man. They bring something to me, of course, along with my beautiful wife, who's loved me unconditionally, my children. So, you know, my family and my church are the first 2 people who said to me, you're good, and we like you are, man. So I come from a context of rejection, and so coming here, preaching to people, hugging people, it really blesses me, man.
It was Sunday night, and I had preached Sunday morning, and taken my mother-in-law and my 2 little boys at the time and my wife to get something to eat, and we were coming back to church. It was raining. I was driving a 1979 Silver Anniversary Trans Am with an infrared dashboard T-top. You can tell I liked the car. Was driving through the rain and hit a slick spot at the same time that some lady in a Jeep turned right in front of me. Long story short, the metal in my car ate the metal in her Jeep, and they got together, and there was grinding and screaming and spinning, and the battery jumped out the car about 15 feet. My head hit the windshield, and when everything stopped, and I really thought we were gonna die because it went in slow motion. It really, just like it does on TV, it's so weird. I'm like dying and fascinated because everything's like going really slow. And I thought, oh, this must be it, but it wasn't. And then it hit real time again, and my wife's ankle was crushed, and she couldn't walk. And when we got her to the hospital, I was okay, the kids were okay. My mother-in-law was okay. It knocked her shoes off her feet. The impact was so strong. Clean down the street, but we were all fine. My wife was injured. The doctor told me my wife would never walk again, and if she walked again, she'd walk with the metal brace up to her knee. And I was young and crazy and full of faith and fire and had no money, so I couldn't get the therapist or anything. So I became the therapist, and I stood out in front of her every day and held her arms and taught her how to walk. And she's still walking today. And we took it one step at a time. And she doesn't have a metal brace, and our kids are grown, and we're grandparents, and she's still walking today. But we took the steps by faith, and we took them one at a time because we believed against all odds that what God had given us to do would not be ended by one incident along the way. You can't let one moment define you or destroy you. Even if it destroys you in the minds of people, you cannot allow their opinion to stifle your existence, because God gave you life, and what you do with it is your gift to Him.
I'm actually not supposed to be sitting here talking to you. My dad wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. My father murdered a man, so I was supposed to follow in his footsteps. I come from a broken home. I came out of one of the worst projects in the nation, Fairground Projects in Chester. Survived it. We had a motto, nothing good comes out of the fairground. So I overcome not supposed to be born. One of the worst neighborhoods you could be growing up in at one time. Broken home, a violent father who I stabbed at age 3 to get him off my mother. He never touched her again, because I actually threatened to kill him after that. He was a drunk, so it would have been easy for me to get to him. But he believed me, and he never touched her again, but my mother got us out of there. Taught me a lesson. Sometimes you love people, but you can't stay with them, because the environment was bad. So I saw her exercise a strength that I think a lot of people don't have. She did not leave him because she didn't love him. She didn't love him. She left him because she couldn't stay there. So that was real significant to me. Key moment with her was we were living in the projects. I was sitting at the bottom of the steps, and he called her to tell her he was getting ready to marry another woman. And I heard her cry. And I swore at 6 that I would never make her cry a sad tear in her life. And I kept my word to her until she died at about age 74. But even then, I'm not supposed to be here. I don't have any preachers in my family, so there's no legacy. This is the only church I've ever pastored. Bethany's the only church I've ever pastored. They sued me, threatened to kill me in the first year and a half that I was here. Started with 29 people. They were 4-0. They had never been defeated. I was the 5th pastor in 23 years. They killed 2 and retired 2. So it was. I'm not supposed to be sitting here. But I think the lesson is you may You may be smarter than me. You may be more talented than me. You may have stronger relationships and networking than I do. But you'll never outwork me. It's impossible to outwork me. I think hard work levels every playing field. Hard work makes every opportunity fruitful. You have to be able to work through inconveniences. If you don't understand that opportunity is inconvenient, and those that miss it resent the intrusion into their norm, because opportunity brings a new normal to your life. And if you don't get that, don't understand that, you'll think the severity of an issue is not an opportunity. Severity does not mean it's not an opportunity. Severity means there's something greater on the other side of that hindrance. So when I'm looking at opportunity, the last thing in the world you can have is fear. But a sound mind gives you the ability to read through, look through, and wade your way through, navigate your way through very difficult situations. So it's not really about how you start in this life. It's all about how you finish. It's not about how fast you can run. It's how long you can run. There's some stuff you have to outlive. Sometimes you have to outlive stuff in your own life, but if you can outlive it, you can overcome it.
My parents, on one occasion, they went out of town. I just got my license, my driver's license. I'm about 16 years of age, and I'm staying at my friend's house. My parents had an electric garage with the garage opener. I knew my parents were going away, so I stole the garage opener. I told my friends, listen, my parents are away, let's go get my father's car. I know where the keys are, and get into the car. Father at the time had a Mercedes-Benz, and we took the car, drove it to school, drove over to the Catholic all-girls school, drove over to Morgan, just wheeling, balling with a Mercedes. We in the 11th grade. I had it for the whole day. Went to McDonald's, treating everybody, piling 10, 12 people into the car, and dropped everybody off at home. Then got back home, opened the electric garage, pulled in, and when I pulled in, I pulled too close to the garage and scratched the entire side of the car. And it's really been a life lesson for me, that whenever it is that you think you've gotten away with what it is you weren't supposed to do, you'll end up pulling in too close. And in pulling in too close, you'll always leave a scar or a stain about what it is that you've done, in your misgivings, and in your poor decisions, and in your bad choices. And so many people in life, like myself, when God will give you grace, and He'll let you do whatever it is you want to do, hang out as long as you want to hang out, but just when you think you've gotten away with it, you'll pull in too close and mess up the very thing that was the vehicle of your freedom. It's a life lesson for young people, for Christian people, for men, for women, for adults, that you cannot get so close that you forget that what it is that you're skating on or driving in is God's greatest vehicle, which is grace.
I think one was when I was working for IBM, and I was a hotshot pilot, came out, started working for them. I knew I was all that, if you know what I mean. And defining moment is when I couldn't sell anything. I was hired in sales, computers, and nothing was happening. And they cut your salary back to 1/2. And I got to feed, now how do I do this? And I remember that night I was going to make a presentation the next day, and I put my head on my desk and tears came to my eyes. And I was trying to figure out, is this for me? And a lady who was an experienced salesman, she said, "Hey, Winston, She saw me down there with my head. She said, "You got time for a cup of coffee?" I said, "No, I don't want to drink any coffee." So she made me go, and we went to the coffee room, and she began to talk to me about my personality. She said, "Hey, don't come across like you know it all." She said, "As a matter of fact, on your flip chart presentation, make a mistake in spelling a word or something and just correct it on the spot and so forth. Bring a little bit of humility to your life." I did that. The customer bought the computer. I could feed my family and everything. But my point to you is, that was a defining moment for me, in that there's a time where you have to be teachable. And even though you've made so many achievements in your life, there's still room to learn. And even a baby can teach you. I've learned that now. A baby can say things. Young kids can say things sometimes. You say, wow, how did they think of that? But I think he said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And that meek means teachable. You got to be pliable. God's still molding you. And I don't care how far you've gone. Paul said, "By the grace of God, I am what I am." He was one of the most learned men. He had achieved all of that. He had achieved all of that, but he saw himself teachable.
Joshua developed an ailment, and we started carrying him to the doctors. They tried to treat it and whatever. And one day we got a call. He got a call, or he called us. He was away at school, and said he had worked out hard the day before with some other guys in an exercise routine. And he asked me about what he should take and do, because he was kind of stiff. So I said, well, take some of this, take some of that. You know, you're stiff. Whenever you work out hard, you're going to be stiff, because he hadn't been working out because of this ailment. Well, the next day he called back. He was in worse shape. That's kind of strange. So we had some friends there. And so they called and said, we're going to take him to the hospital. So we said, okay, just take him to the hospital. Well, the hospital kept him. And to make a long story short, it got right serious. I called the doctors, and the doctor said, well, you know, his body is breaking down. The muscles in his body are breaking down. We've checked to see if he had a heart attack. He hasn't. So this is muscle deterioration, cannibalizing itself, and the waste of it is going all into his system. That's what's blocked his kidneys and all. And we can't get the number to reverse itself. And I'm calling in a consult, but we've done all we can do. I didn't have the nerve to tell my wife that. I could not tell her that, and I'm like, God, this is my worst nightmare. Job says, that which I greatly feared has come upon me. Something has happened to my children. The reverse of something happening to me and not be there for them. Now something is happening to them, and I can't do anything for them. There's nothing I can do. I know a lot of friends who are specialists and whatever, but there's nothing anybody can do. This is my son, and I can't tell my wife how scared I am, because she's already worried enough. And somebody has to maintain the possibility here. Joy and Walter are coming up, and it's Saturday. This is a Saturday, and I have to choose. Saturday, and somebody said, well, why do you have to choose? Well, it's Saturday evening. Sunday's coming. I have to preach on Sunday morning. Of course you're not going to preach. You're going to stay at the hospital with your son, because his numbers are going bad. And that makes clear sense. Everything makes sense until you ask yourself the right questions. Everything makes sense on ordinary questions till you ask yourself the right probing questions. I'm sitting in the hospital. Staying there is no problem for me. And I start wondering, if I stay here, what am I saying? Why am I staying? Am I staying because Joshua's numbers are going to get worse and I need to be here when this goes bad? Is that what I'm saying? That I need to be here when all hell breaks loose? When they can't turn his condition around or he checks out? If I stay here, I'm staying here because I want to be here for my wife and him when things get worse. So I am saying things are going to get worse. I cannot say that. I can't sit here and accept that fact that he is not going to get better. That is not going to happen. But if I stay here, that is what I am saying, that I have to be here for my wife and my children because he is not going to get, he is going to get better. There's nothing they can do. The consult hasn't come up with anything. He is going to get better. Yes, he is. I am not going to believe tomorrow is the last day of his life on a Sunday. This is not going to happen. So what do? Do I stay or do I go home? I am going home. I said to my wife, I'm going home because, tomorrow's coming and I need to get home and get ready for church. I said, he's going to be fine. I said, y'all call me. I said, Joy had was coming up. She's going to spend the evening. I said, y'all call me and let me know what the doctor says his number is in the morning. Joy sent me a text at either the end of that service or the beginning of the next, or somewhere, that said his number has gone in the other direction and has gone and has started to go back down. I like to shouted myself silly. And the next day when we rode up, they said, you can take him home. He on his way to healing and recovery. And I thanked God like never before. But I thanked him also for the courage to be able to face my fear and believe, not face my fear and collapse.
Sociologists and psychologists say by the time we are 30 years old, we're set in our ways. So by the time a person's 30, they're set on what they think, they believe, their behaviors, their habits, and all of that. And that's why Nicodemus was like, how can somebody my age change? I'm used to living like this. People can even get comfortable in discomfort. People can get satisfied in dissatisfaction. And as someone suggested, if you don't change, you can't grow. And if you're gonna grow, you have to change. And so those people level off because they're not willing to change. At my church, and I'm invited around the country to teach about church growth and all of that. My church has gone through so many transition periods because we had to change to accommodate the growth, and we had to change to continue to grow. And in this, anybody who unites with this ministry know, you better be ready for some changes. Because my thing is this, if I'll change stuff I started, I'm sure gonna change stuff that started before I got here. And it's those changes that make a difference. So once people, and the thing is, what is God's will for me right now? And once you get that straight, you're gonna be fine. But
people just get satisfied in dissatisfaction. And you talk about bad relationships, people stay. Bad jobs, can't meet the need of my family, can't advance the kingdom of God. I have no room for growth and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not willing to reinvest in myself and do what is necessary right now to go the direction that jobs are. Won't change. And they frustrate themselves because you have the inner capacity to change. My wife called me. I was in, I don't know where I was, but she called me. I was at the airport ready to come home. And she said, Jeffrey, I just wanted to call you and let you know that we had a blizzard hit Indianapolis last night. And the driveway is full of snow and you're gonna get stuck in the snow when you get home. So I said, well, are you stuck in the snow? She said, no, I'm out driving in it right now. I said, well, if you out driving in it right now, what makes you think I'm gonna get stuck in this snow? And she said, I just wanted to warn you, you're gonna get stuck in the snow. So I get home, my driveway's got 6 inches of snow, all my neighbor's snow's blown down in front of my house. And I was so tired after working and flying in and driving home. It took me more than an hour and a half to get home. It normally takes 40 minutes. And I just lined my car up with that driveway. I was gonna speed through the snow. And I went a few feet, got stuck. I tried to rock it and come back and forth. And I was ashamed to call my wife because she warned me I was gonna get stuck in the snow. And I had already dogged it. I'm a better driver than you. I drive more than you. It's a skill. And here's the thing. When I tell that story, people are wondering, how did you get stuck in the snow and she didn't? How did she pass through what you got stuck in? Same storm, same home, same everything. You stuck in it, she passed through it. How is that? Because in my wife's vehicle, there is a button on the inside that can change from 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive. And because she had the capacity to make the change, she passed through the storm. My car doesn't have the capacity to change, and I got stuck in it. And that is the difference between passing through tragedies and passing through challenges and difficulty, why some people pass through and others don't. Because God, with his Holy Spirit on the inside, has given us the capacity to change, to move through the storms that come in our life. And when you change, you keep going. And when you don't change, you get stuck in it.
I've lost friends, or I've lost church members, or lost them to cancer or disease or sickness. And you know, we prayed and we believed God, and we quoted the word. We did everything that we knew to do, and so many times we might have lost them anyway. And I really learned something through that, though. I learned at the end of the day, God is sovereign. I've prayed for people that have gotten miracles. Prayed for a baby who had been in a coma. I think it was 2009. It was the Christmas miracle at the river. They brought in a baby that was about 8 months old who had been a victim of shaken baby syndrome. She was in a coma. And we just prayed for her. And I remember praying for her. And if you have ever seen the footage, she's laying in her mama's arms just as still and as unconscious as you've ever seen anybody. We prayed for her. There was such a crazy anointing in the room that day that our ministers came, gathered around, and nothing changed. And I will never forget that day. I laid down on the altar. I was supposed to be preaching, but I just fell out on the altar, and tears were pouring down my face. And I remember screaming to the top of my lungs, and I said, "Art thou the Christ, or should I look for another?" I was just saying to God, I've lived for you all my life, and if this thing is real, I need you to show up and make yourself known in this place. And if you're not real, then I need to know that right now. And I was laying there screaming it, just as loud as I could scream it. And about maybe 30 minutes later, they brought the baby back in and they said, her eyes are opening. And the next thing I know, we caught it all on camera. The baby's rolling her eyes and she's looking around and she's come out of that coma. And so it was one of those moments that was one of the weakest and one of the strongest moments in my faith. And it all happened on the same day within maybe a 30-minute time frame. Out of all the places that God could have been that day and was, he manifested a miracle, a tangible miracle right there in our church, right there in front of my eyes. And I grew up hearing about the tent revivals and the people that had the gifts of healing, the Catherine Colemans, A.A. Allen, all of those people. And I wish that we saw more of that in the church today. But I know one thing, on that Sunday morning, it was as if the host of heaven had come into that room and said, oh no, that baby's not leaving here until she is changed.
Coming into the pastorate, I had the opportunity to interact with a preacher of Dutch origin, quite by accident, by the name of Robert Schuller, who started and led and built what came to be known as the Crystal Cathedral. And I wanted to go out there to see it because he went there as a young man with $500 and his wife, and the Lord used him to build a great church, and I wanted to see it. Because I was 26 coming to a church of 100 people and really clueless enrichment as to how to go about that. I ran into him after cajoling and convincing his administrative assistant to let me see his office. And we were on the elevator and he got on the elevator as I was coming out of his office, and we had a kind of clumsy, awkward introduction that led to a 15-minute conversation. And what he shared with me was profound, because I said to him, look, I'm a 26-year-old pastor. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, other than preaching and baptizing, I don't know anything about growing this church. Help me. And he said, well, I need to know something about you. I said, okay. He said, are you prepared to invest your life there? And of course, at 26, that's a difficult question. And I said, well, I'm not really sure. He said, well, you need to wrestle with that question first. He said, because if you just want to make a change, it won't require your life. But if you want to have an impact, it's going to require you to invest your entire life there. And so I thought about that. He said, in addition to that, I want to leave you with a question. I said, what question is that? He said, what would you do for God if you knew you could not fail? He said, that's what ought to occupy your agenda. He said, take all the limits off and allow yourself to dream the dream for this people that God sees.
One time, when we had one car, and it needed a tune-up bad. And the tune-up was going to cost me $50 back in the 70s. And the only $50 I had was God's $50, the money we would give, because I only made $350 a month then. So we weren't poor, we were poor. It's real poor. $50. And I said, God, I'm gonna give you this 50 because I'm gonna believe that you got my back with this car. I don't know how, but this is all I got. I need this tune-up, but I believe you got my back. So I gave the 50. A couple of days later, I'm driving down the road and there's smoke coming out my engine. My engine is on fire. The fire department has to come out to put out the fire in my engine. So right now, I'm butt ticked at God, because as far as I was concerned, I trusted you and you set my car on fire, because I was butt muffed at God, because this was a big faith moment for me. So I was very disappointed that my car was on fire after I had sacrificially given. I had insurance, but it was a $200 deductible that had not been paid. So no paying deductible, no paying for the car to be fixed. The car was towed into a dealership. I came in the next day, only to discover they're working on my car. So I'm saying, you working on the car? He said, yeah. I said, the insurance company okay you working on the car? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm not sure how they could do that if I didn't pay the deductible yet. He said, well, what deductible? And I pulled out the paperwork that said, deductible $200, and I hadn't paid it. He said, oh, you didn't look at that little box at the bottom. So I looked at the little box at the bottom and it said, except for fire, no deductible. So we had church up in that dealership that day. I never forgot. That was only $50. But what I thought was a disaster was actually an answer to prayer. So it showed me something about prayer. It showed me that God can do the exact opposite and be answering your prayer at the same time.
I had a member to call, and she was in hysterics, and they had taken her husband to the hospital. And normally that call would have gone to Pastor Hutchins as her elder, because of the way our church is structured. But for whatever reason, I felt called of God to take that call. And I went on to the hospital. Well, her husband had passed. And he was laying on the table, already gone, had tubes sticking up out of his mouth. Everybody was in hysterics when I walked in. And I got everybody calm and brought that thing down. And then finally asked the others to go and just his wife. And I watched her rub on his face and talk to him. I kid you not, Doc, that thing changed me forever. Something about the way she rubbed him and talked to him reminded me of how soon life is gone. And that relationships really need to be real and thick and honest. I watched her, he's dead, he's cold. I touched his, he wasn't really cold, but he was cooler than a person would be. And she's rubbing with that thing sticking out of his mouth. And I thought, Rosie, this is a moment that you can't afford to miss. Because one day you're gonna have to do that to somebody you love, or they'll be doing that to you. And I remember stepping back and saying, God, anything that's fake, I can't be in it anymore. I'm not gonna laugh when it's not funny. I'm not gonna nod when I don't agree. I'm not gonna try to be anything that I'm not, ever again. Because this moment, this brings it to real here. And from that moment to this, I've kept to that. I'm not missing something I really want to do. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let somebody keep me, someone said, oh my God, you need to be on the Word Network and all of that. And I just had somebody beg me again, please consider it. I wouldn't even give it a thought, no. Because I don't want to get swept up into a circle of preachers where I have to be a certain way. I don't want that. I don't have any ambition like that. I don't want to be known like that. Now, if that's the only way to please God, I will do it. But other than that, I'll never forget, I was sitting in Pigsca, and Bishop Jakes, I just You know, what in the world? Can anybody preach any better than Bishop Jakes? I'm sitting at Pisgah, which is a meeting he had for pastors 40 and above. And he made a statement. He said, when you get to certain places, everything needs to change. You have to learn to fit where, you know, to dress where you are and to speak where you, and he's exactly right. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Bishop, so true. That's why exactly. I don't want that. I don't want to be in a place where I can't jump on my motorcycle without it being an issue. I don't want to be in a place where me and my sons can't clown and play and have on matching warm-up suits and go out. I don't want to be Bishop to the point where I can't tickle my husband and pat him on his behind. If I've got to change all that, no, I don't want that. That moment just helped me to see, you know, we're all going to die. And no matter how important you think you are, they're going to move the communion table for you. And folk going to walk past you. Whatever you're going to really do for Christ, and it's a dream in your heart, you got to do it. And don't waste time being who you're not. It doesn't work, and it's exhausting.
Chilling at the crib, thinking about what he's done for me. All the good times, the bad, and the laughs. Every circumstance in my life fills my mental capacity. My mind needs church, but unlike David, I'm not glad. Underground emotions rule my thoughts, but I still pray. I remember being taught one day everything will be okay. The pressure builds and anxiety gets the best of me.